Now we're going to return to the darker shapes on the palette. We're going to start to put in some more information for the eyes. We have a little dark shape there for one iris, and now the other. And I think what I'm going to do is with this brush, I'm going to use the same brush, add a little bit of cadmium red medium. Cadmium red medium is going to help to to make the value a little lighter and also a little bit warmer. And again, I'm utilizing the value web on my palette to help me with these color and value transitions. So that shape there, I think just maybe it needs to get a little bit warmer. And so a little disclaimer, so when you're working with photo reference, the best thing you can do, well, it's up to you really, but I think that for me the best thing I can do is to interpret as much as I can and ask myself why a certain color looks the way it looks. So right around here, I'm seeing a little bit more warmth. And the reason I'm seeing a little bit more warmth, I think, is because the light is coming from this direction. And again, the skin, all the warm colors around the skin is just probably affecting this dark and making it appear a little bit warmer. And the awkward stage in this painting is incredible. I mean, the awkwardness is incredible. And that usually tends to happen when you have much more of a front and center look. But again, just take into account that that's just going to happen, especially when you're working with, like I said again, the front and center look. It's very close to front and center, but again, see the corner of the nose, you can see that the model is slightly turned 3/4 relative to us, slightly though. It's a little bit more Neo Megilp. I'm going to just kind of solidify that shape a little better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to work the shapes around the eyes. So let's see, with a lighter brush now, I'm going to go ahead and start to develop more volume. I'm going to need that halftone brush, however, so okay, I'm going to have to introduce another brush. And again, it does get kind of hard to keep track of which brush is which brush did you designate for what, so yeah, I'm going to probably mix up my brushes once in a while, but don't worry, we'll be okay. So cadmium red, cadmium yellow deep. Even though you don't see it in the photo reference, there should be more warmth in here somewhere. And again, this corner, we can relate this corner to that corner. So let's go ahead and switch back. You know, I'm going to have, I think, 4 brushes. This is going to be the darker dark, so I'm going to clean it off with the Odorless Mineral Spirits very quickly now. And we're going to start to close in on these shapes. And the question is now, how far does this corner go until it reaches this corner? I'm gonna have to switch to, I've got my brushes all confused now. So this one right here, whatever brush it may be, it's a different brush, that's all that matters right now. So see how we're kind of honing everything now with respect to this. Something's up here, so I think that I need more, more structure. So I think the concavity of the eye socket's facing the light even less than I was, even less than I thought. So we're going to make that darker. You know, I think that the eyes are also a little bit bigger, but I'm not going to dwell too much on, you know, trying to finish anything in here. Rather, I started putting more information into the eyes so that I could continue to build and relate the surrounding shapes. A little more light there. The nasal bone is facing the light a little bit more. Now it's going to be even more light down here. Now this is a part of the painting. So, you know, in the painting, usually it's very fast moving when you're getting started. But then as you start to progress and add more and more shapes, it'll start to slow down. And maybe in like a half hour or like in, you know, 45 minutes or whatever, the painting may not even look like you've done much to it, but you've been working at it slowly and slowly. And that's just kind of the pace of painting. It's a little faster, however, when you're working this way. So when you're working in alla prima, it does go by a little more quickly, which is another thing I like about alla prima, is that we can just move so much faster. And I did just obliterate the eyebrow just because it's lighter here, darker here, lighter there, and then even lighter there. So, you know, it's more important to get those large underlying structures than to get a perfect eyebrow. The eyebrow can just always be added on later. Still, I'm seeing much more warmth. Let's add more of an impasto shape, should we? So let's add right here. I know I should be using a bristle for this, but just adding more of the flake white with the, what was that? The cadmium yellow deep. So that angle that I was talking about before, let's see here. One of my brushes might work. I guess this one will work. So in this region of the palette, I'm going to shore up that edge now. So again, I'm going to be relating these outer shapes to these inner shapes. Back into here. Let's put in a little more. See how I'm going from here to here? Keep relating all of your shapes. And I think even still, this can probably still get a little darker, so let's just get right into this. Now again, the nose could be anywhere. I mean, the nose could be, even at this stage, the nose could be moved up, it could be moved down. The important thing is to see all of this at once. We're starting to build all of these structures all at once. What was that? There's like I guess a thunderstorm outside. Anyway, so what's more important right now is to look at the light and dark shapes. So I think that around here, I really need to squint my eyes. It's important to squint your eyes to see value. Try to open your eyes to see color. And remember, the addition of each new shape in the painting will always give rise to another awkward stage. And don't worry, that's just the way it is. And yes, I am going to use a little more alizarin in the nose. Right over here. But now the nose is starting to get a little wonky. So again, not the model's nose, but the nose that I'm painting. So I'm going to have to be very cautious with the shapes. And I have to be very careful not to frontalize. And frontalization is going to be the biggest danger, especially when I'm working with this type of pose, meaning where the pose is closer to front and center than anything. And it's okay if I frontalize it a little bit, which I think I am. I can always come back in and put in more refinement. But I think that we're going to take it nice and slow with this one. And by frontalize, I mean losing the center line. And that's not something I want to do. I want to get the turn. You know, the model is a little bit turned that way. Almost front and center, but still turned in that direction. And another important thing is just don't dwell. Don't stress yourself. Enjoy the process. I have to be very careful though with the with how much space I'm giving from this corner to this corner. So in a way, yes, of course, it would have been easier if I had these outlines all filled out. But, you know, this just leaves room for exploration. Then, of course, there's going to be a really, really bright light down here. So titanium white and the titanium white and the cadmium yellow deep. And by now, I'm relying very heavily on the paint handling. I'm relying very heavily on the, also the quality of the oil paint. And again, nothing fancy here, just Winsor and Newton, and Winsor and Newton Gamblin. And I think this one right here, the Cadmium Yellow Deep, is a Grumbacher color. And that actually leads me to another post-it note. And again, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. So LolikoLja was talking about, again, these are all paraphrased, so I read over the comments and then I try to pick out information that I can extract from it and talk about in a kind of coherent fashion in the painting. So struggling, so yours seems to be that you're writing to me about you're struggling with the pictures looking darker. So that is something interesting to talk about at this stage. So I think that has to do with two things. So one being the actual paint quality, the quality of the oil paints. So that's a materials thing. And then the other is just a painting thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest you to do this. So get a very coherent and solid understanding of your light key. So we're going to put in something that's very close to titanium white, but just a little bit darker. See how on the palette I mixed it in with these colors? You really want to have a gauge for your lightest lights. And right there, very bold brush mark. See how much lighter we can go. And again, this isn't as light as the titanium white. And even this, I can still kind of, move the paint around it. And again, this is why I enjoy painting wet on wet these days, just because, look at this. I can start to put in the gradation of the paint just by the way that I'm, moving the brush stroke around the picture. Okay, so another factor could also be the oil paints themselves. So always make sure, if you have access to artist grade oil paint, I would highly suggest using artist grade oil paint. Because again, I used to use student grade oil paints in the past, but the thing is that, especially with the reds, and I think that it is hard to build up the intensity of the color with the student grade oil paint. So just be a little cautious of the student grade oil paints. So as I start to add more and more refinement into these shapes, I'm starting to realize that I should probably start to put in more information for the mouth. So again, let's just take from this lighter shape we mixed up. Again, put in a little light key right there. And over here. And so for the mouth, let's see here. I may need a different brush. I don't have one readily available, so let's just use one of these. So the cadmium red into this area of the palette and just that. And I want to start off with the top middle of the mouth. So the top middle portion of the mouth is going to help me place in the center line. And I'm thinking of her philtrum. So her philtrum is a little bit, I want to say, shorter, I think, than the standard canon of proportions, which is perfectly fine. Everyone has the planes on everyone's face will vary, and that's what makes us look unique. So I'm going to go ahead and just indicate the root of the nose by putting in the darks for the nostrils. Very simple there. And again, the indication of, when you put in a new shape, any new bit of information that you put into the portrait will introduce another awkward stage. So just be aware of that. And also be aware of elongating things. So I think that the nose may be long. So I'm not sure. That's just my intuition is telling me that the nose might be a little bit too long. So I'm going to switch brushes and show you how to just move the shape up easily. See that? We're going to very easily move that shape. And that might also help with the shadow shape, because I was having some concerns with that shadow shape. And I am getting my brushes confused, so it'll be all right. And then while I do that, I'm starting to notice that that's a little off. So I'm going to get the larger flesh tone brush and see how the introduction of something new, so starting to put in the light for the lip, the top middle portion of the lip, actually kind of was helping me see that I might have to move the shape of the nose up. Sometimes that happens. When you start to add in new information, you start to see how you can perfect the information you had previously, and even some color variation. So a little bit of cadmium green, and the sap green. I'm actually seeing some cooler notes into here that I didn't quite see before. So now that I think that the nose is in the right kind of area, I'm just going to go ahead and with the light, I'm just going to drop in a little shape for the highlight, which should read fairly well at a distance. And again, I'm still keeping it simple and easy and workable, so that, you know, like I usually say, if I need to make adjustments, those adjustments are simple and easy. But now we can start to get into the topic of, not copying. So interpret and don't copy. Again, it's all up to personal preference. I just don't like the feeling of being a human photocopier. It's just not my style. Now, if you're very into making something look, perfectly like a photograph, then that's fine. But it's just not my aesthetic, and we all have to choose our own aesthetic. Well, no, scratch that. Our own aesthetic finds us. I think that if you are honest with yourself, and you present yourself with the subject matter that you want to paint, you start painting, your style will find you. You don't have to go out searching for a style. You don't have to go out searching for any particular way that you want your painting to look. You have your own personality. Your own personality will always show in the painting. Therefore, you don't have to go out searching for a style, because that already exists within you. So I'm gonna add a little bit more, let's say, ultramarine blue. I want something that's kind of more greenish. Lighten the value with the cadmium green. Let's risk it a little bit. So we're gonna make it even more green. So in a sense here, we're gonna start to push the color. And that little area beneath the lower lip, it just so happens that usually tends to be the case, where that area, it just is more green. I can't explain it, but I just always see it. This portion here is always more green. And now with the light brush, with the Alizarin Crimson Permanent, it's a very dark color, and I think that that's probably lipstick. I'm not entirely sure. I am cleaning off the brush here off to the side. I think that's a lipstick, but I'm not sure. And again, I'm not an expert in makeup. So a little bit more of a dark red. There we go. It almost looks like those lips are perfectly alizarin permanent. And that's something we artists tend to do. Walk up to the model. Did you put alizarin permanent on your lips? I dare you. I dare you to do that. Alright, so I don't want to put too much in for the mouth because, again, I want to keep it simple and easy. I want to keep these shapes simple and easy so that, like I usually say, when I need to make adjustments or when the time comes to make any changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. Let me just clean this off with the mineral spirits. And again, I'm going to keep adjusting the side. I think that can still push inwards. Just throw in a little dark accent for the eyebrows. Okay, so now I'm thinking about the structure down here. I'm starting to basically add more refinement to these shapes. So let's see here. I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to let that value be really dark. I switch into this one here. Okay, so right around here. Yeah, so sometimes I have to pause, make a brush stroke, and then stand back, or in this case, just sit back. You gotta explore the surface. Something's up here. Don't know quite what. You know, so when you think that something's going on with any one particular shape, and you can't figure out what's going on with that shape in question, then it's important to just move around that shape, and then eventually you'll find your way coming back, and then, oh, that's what I needed to do, kind of thing will happen. So a little bit of flesh tone showing. Whoa, why is that so warm? Oh, because I was using it for the, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to have to mix to the right of that little puddle there. So again, I'm trying to show you every single brushstroke involved in this painting. Sometimes I just don't know what to say, so just bear with me if I seem to be really quiet for a while. A little bit more yellow ochre. Sap green, yellow ochre. Mix right into this red. It's just too red. There we go. I'm going to keep pushing this shape. And you know what? I think this is a double shadow. This darker shape here. So this is a shadow to this. And this is a shadow to this. Oh no, I don't want that. I think in this photo reference, well, as you can tell in the picture, there are definitely multiple lights. So I'm going to have to select one shadow to be my true shadow, which is going to be all of this around here. So this, I'm going to have to fake it. I'm going to have to turn it into a reflected light, even though I can barely see it. So I'm going to use the cadmium red medium into here, into the basically this region of the palette. I'm just going to push this reflected light even more than I see it. Some more burnt umber. A little bit more Neo Megilp, just because the paint just have too much paint. The Neo Megilp again, the medium helps to increase the fluidity of the paint. Let's just throw in a little mark for where the shoulders would fall. And again, it's always nice to have a little mark there for where the shoulders are going to be, even if, even if it's hard to see. Now I'm going to move right back into these shapes. So I'm going to move back and forth between the very dark brush, so I guess this one, with the Ivory Black and the Alizarin Permanent, and the shadow brush. I'm going to have to revisit those eyes in a little bit, but again, I'm still kind of working all around. So this is more straight. At least I perceive it to be more straight. Now again, let's go back into that shadow brush. We're going to try to merge these values in between one another. Try to cover this. I'll switch to the light brush. Add a little bit more warmth above the frontal region of the skull. And at the same time, we're going to be softening the edge for the hairline. This is definitely one of the most peculiar edges. You want it to be very, very soft. I do kind of need a new fan brush. This fan brush just helps to eliminate glare. Now I'm going to switch back to this. Hopefully this has the value I want. Yep, it does. So this is the brush that I was using for the halftones earlier on. And again, I'm not worried about if I obliterate the eyebrow or something like that. It's not a concern. Let's put some more information around for the hair. I think I am going to put in a background color this time, just because last time I kind of left the vignette like basically without the background color. And that's going to lead us to another post-it note very soon. Let's just put in some more information for the hair. And I am going to, I'm definitely going to have to revisit the eyes. The eyes are a little bit more graceful than the way we have it painted right now. But for the hair, you know, if you're ever wondering how to paint the partition of the hair, just basically a little bit of flesh tone, but darker flesh tone, just like we just threw in there. Try to relate, so you drop a vertical from here to there, and that'll help you place where the partition of the hair needs to fit. Very simple and easy way to paint the hair. And so I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some shapes for the ears before painting in the background, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to decide what to put for the background. And I usually relate the root of the nose to the ear, to the bottom of the earlobe. It looks like, just optically, not going to be, you know, I'm not going to take out a measuring tool. I'm just going to use my brush. It looks like this will go here. Optically now. And then you may ask, well, why aren't you measuring? Isn't that how you get the accuracy? Yes, that's how you get something to be super accurate. Just take out some calipers like you've seen me do before, and then measure. But again, you know, I don't like to do everything the same time every time, except this technique I'm starting to actually really like. But in any case, just relating, you know, salient points to one another. So here to here, this is just a little bit lower. Now we're going to put in the earlobe. Very simple. And while we're at it, this edge is going to get a little darker. It's just going to dissipate, well, not dissipate, that's the wrong word, but it's just going to get darker just because there's a plane here. So this shape here is getting much darker just because it's turning away from the light as it approaches the shapes for the ears. The edge, as a consequence, is also going to be very soft over there. And now that we put in the ear, again, we're going to keep entering a series of awkward stages, and that's just the way it is. And I think that's why it's important to work with the entire picture all at once, because you don't want to spend a super long time on one portion of the face just to move to another and then just have it all fall apart. And of course that's happened to me, you know. It's all part of the fun in painting. I love the learning experience. I usually say learning is like one of my favorite hobbies. Next to reptiles. I love reptiles. And I will admit, I do have one bearded dragon. So I'm not going to talk too much about pets. But I do have a Chihuahua, a bearded dragon. Just pushing a little bit more of a reddish touch into here. And of course we're going to have a little bit of a shape here. And it's okay if we put in a little too much for the back of the ear. I believe this is the anti-helix, this is the helix, but I don't know. I could be wrong there. It's just a curved looking thing in the back of the ear. Alright, so now that I have that, I'm going to start around here with the background color. But first, we have a little post-it note. So I'm going to try to pronounce your name. Emin Abbas, doing the best I can here. So again, this is from another comment. So background color choices. So again, I've kind of abbreviated the comment. But in the comment, you ask, and this will be helpful, especially in this part of the painting. So you ask, how do I know which colors to put in? So how do I know which colors to put in for the background? So I'll tell you what, I think that the the background, it depends on the, the purpose of the painting. Is the painting supposed to be a perfect, like depiction of what you're observing in nature? And if it is, then I would just paint it as I see it. But since that's not what I'm after, with this painting, I can go, let's choose this together. So I want the background to be darker than this tone, just so I add another element into the composition. But I also want the background to be a little bit cooler. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more Neo Megilp to this brush. I'm actually going to just clean it a little bit off to the side here with my little container of odorless mineral spirits. So I'm going to clean it off, add a little bit of Neo Megilp to it. Alright, so first thing would be to say, well, just make it gray, but a darker gray. And we can try that, and maybe that'll be what works, but we'll see. So this is what you want to do. So put down a mark or a color right next to another color. So I'm putting down that color right next to the ear, and I'm also comparing that to the hair. And I think that that value is pretty good, but it's a little too close to the hair. So adding a little bit more titanium white. Maybe even more. We want just a little spot for the background color to start off with. So I'd say that's pretty good, but now it's just gray. It's just ivory black and titanium white. Is that the color that we want? And I think it's working pretty well, but I don't want it to be too generically, say, just gray. So I'm going to tint it with a little bit of Alizarin Permanent, just to add a little bit more warmth and a little bit more nuance to that color. And again, I'm just showing you one way to approach the problem with background color. And so now that I have that, I think, just maybe I don't want it to be that, I don't know, that dark. So now I'm going to go ahead and just start to mix on the palette, because I'm pretty sure that's what I want, but just a little bit lighter. So ivory black, titanium white, and admittingly there is some flesh tone on this brush just because I didn't clean it. I didn't do the best job cleaning it. So admittingly, there's some flesh tone. So black, white, some flesh tone, and then the Alizarin Permanent. So that's gray, but it's not entirely, like a basic gray. All right, that's what I want. So yes, so going back to the question, that's how I do it. I want the background to complement the face, basically to complement the figure or the portrait that I'm painting. And that's about it. I mean, that's mostly what goes on in my mind as I'm choosing, what colors for the background. Now, there are more complicated questions when it comes to background, like, well, what elements, like what still life, or, if you're making a narrative painting like the Steve one that we made a while ago, and that's a little more complicated. But in terms of the color, if you want to evoke a particular emotion, red, you can look in, I can't give you the exact answer because I don't know it off the top of my head, but certain colors will evoke certain emotions, like the reds will evoke one emotion, the greens another, the blues another. So you can also think about it that way. So I don't want to spend too much time covering all of the background. But what I really wanted was this contour. I think it does curve in a little bit more. And let's just go ahead and add more specificity to that contour now that we have that option. So let's go ahead right into this. Some burnt umber. At the same time, I'm also kind of softening that edge. We're going to put in the flesh tone that we're observing here. And over here it's going to be more of a flat plane. And this is just, to be honest, this is a lot of fun. Just moving the paint around in this way. You know, not even worrying about... At this point, to be honest, I'm not even that worried about likeness. Interesting, isn't it? I may or may not even have the likeness yet, but at this stage, I would still consider this a very early stage. And I'm still, I'm still enjoying the process. I'm still enjoying the application, the physical application of the paint is something that I truly enjoy. So now getting kind of carried away. So with the other ear, I think that I need to push a little bit more warmth because I do see a little bit more warmth that needs to be addressed there. So some cadmium red medium. Alizarin. Is that the value that I want? Nope. It might be a little too light. So I'll tell you what, switching brushes here. Yep, this brush ought to do it. So I want it to be red, and I don't know if I want to push the color too much. Oh well, might as well just push the color a little bit more. Why not? Why not? So the ear is sticking out a little bit more in the painting than in the photo reference. That's just because I haven't come back in yet with the background color, and I intend to, so I'm giving myself more room here so that I can come back in. And those eyes are really bothering me. The eyes that I painted, not the model's eyes. Don't get me confused, please. Alright, so I want to address this, but I have to focus on this. Do you find that with yourself, you're working on one shape and you're like, but I really want to work on this one? It's important to see the whole thing at once. See the entire picture at once. And I did just kind of instinctually just throw in some of this cooler color, which is the background color, ultimately, into here. I want to put in some cooler notes, so let's just put in some ultramarine blue and some of this. Just to add some more kind of air, some air to the shadow. It's interesting. This is going to be very similar to this. And I'm going to have to choose which value to make darker. Maybe I'll make the shadow here darker. I'm going to have to go back in with the, which brush? See, I'm getting my brushes all confused. So this one, I'm going to clean it off again. The cadmium, sorry, it's really cadmium black, okay. That was a joke. So the ivory black and the alizarin permanent, mixing right onto this area of the palette just to ensure I don't get something too dark. I think that just pushes in a little more than I have it.